Hi, welcome to Coffee with Kim. I am your host, Kim Bassett. And I know I always say this, but I am so excited for today's show. Um, if I've asked a couple people what they what their impression or what do they think about when they say, a negotiation. And I had one person say, "Oh, it's my little kids or my teenagers wanting to negotiate, staying out later or the car." Other people said it was the, big businesses, where someone loses and someone wins. Well, today's guest is going to take it to a whole new level. I am so excited to have her come on. So here's a little bit about her. Today on Coffee with Kim, we are going to be speaking with Christine McKay. Christine is a negotiation strategist, international speaker, and author. With 27 years of experience, she has impacted hundreds of companies in 53 countries. With an MBA from Harvard, the past few years, this busy lady has launched her company, The Vent Negotiation, her podcast, In the Vent Zone, and her book, Why Not Ask, is being released soon. When she is not negotiating, she loves spending time with her husband of 25 years, riding motorcycles. Let's welcome Christine McKay. Woohoo!
Hello, Kim. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, the honor is mine, and I cannot wait till everybody's just is going to flood you with information here. So I'm going to just going to shift really quick to let everybody know. As some of you may know, I am in Texas for the next foreseeable several weeks, and it is real. If you haven't looked at the news or what's happening in Texas right now, it's really cold, like 17 below wind chills. And I lived here for 10 years, and it's not normal. So there's rolling blackouts going on. So I just wanted to put it out there that if we all of a sudden go black, that is why. And we'll come back on. So anyway, but to switch gears back, Christine, I like I told you before, we're going to start off with your story because there's in the sizzle reel, there's part of your story I didn't tell, which is going to blow people away. And I think it's going to be so inspirational. And I get choked up even with this because like I said, I love you. I am so glad that we're getting to know one another and consider you a friend. And I want everybody to know what a remarkable person you are, because they can do it too.
Oh, thank you so much, Kim.
Let,
I really
let it go. There
appreciate
we go.
that.
There we go.
I really appreciate that. Yes, I mean, I've done like Kim said in the sizzle reel. I've negotiated actually with almost half the Fortune 500 across 53 countries, as well as negotiating with hundreds of small and mid-sized companies across a variety of industries. I've loved travel. I've loved working with big companies, and I've had just a lot of success and worked in procurement, worked in sales, worked as a consultant. I've kind of worked across the board, and a lot of time spent in mergers and acquisitions. But my adult life certainly did not start out looking like it was going to be much of any kind of success. Actually, when I was 19, I discovered that I was pregnant and I wasn't married, and I found out it was Super Bowl, and I had just lost my job as I was working in retail at Christmas, and I ended up getting evicted. And I was living in Missoula, Montana, where I have to chuckle because it's not cold compared. Texas is not cold in comparison to Missoula, Montana in January, but I ended up living in the back of my car. And I spent a short time with a woman who essentially robbed me blind and was a heroin addict, and was also pregnant, was doing heroin when she was pregnant. And and then she threw me out. So I started living in the back of my car. And I was in the back of my car and couch surfing where I could. And part of what in the United States we call the hidden homeless, and where I didn't have an address, I could not get on assistance. I lost over 25 pounds in my first trimester. And ultimately, I was able to get out of living in the back of my car. And I met a woman who implanted a dream in my head. And she asked me to draw a picture and put God in the center and to pray for four things. What were four things that I wanted? And I only remember one of those things, but that was that I was going to go to Harvard University. And I remember my first trip to the welfare office. They asked me, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to go to Harvard." And of course, they laughed at me, as did everyone I told. So everybody laughed at me. But after almost 10 full years on the welfare system, I actually graduated from Harvard University. I went to a community college at first, got a full scholarship to a 4-year school in upstate New York, and I had married in that time, married a not so nice guy who I thought was a nice guy, but he turned out to be controlling and abusive. And when I went to community college, I was only allowed to study from like 3 to 6 in the morning. And I realized it was going to be easier on my own than with him in terms of getting my bachelor's degree. And so I did my bachelor's as a single mom, but I was fortunate because I met the man of my dreams during that time. And we'll be celebrating our 28th anniversary this year. And then I made it happen that I actually went to Harvard University. And to the best of my knowledge, nobody else, unfortunately, has gone from being in the back of their car with 3 kids and going and then graduating from Harvard Business School. So it's
Wow.
quite an amazing accomplishment that I'm very, very proud of.
You should be. You should be.
Mhm.
And the talent and the gifts that you have, that you are now giving to others. So I had the honor of being on your podcast, and that's coming out. So tell me kind of all the cool stuff that's coming out right now.
I have so much going on right now. So the podcast is launching on the 2nd of March. It's called In the Ven Zone. And Kim is an amazing guest on the show. So I hope you guys will tune in to at least listen to her. But it has a wide range of guests. I've got people who are neuropsychologists to small business owners like yourself, somebody who has a franchise company with over 100 franchises. I've got somebody who owns a ranch outside of Atlanta, and she has a nonprofit doing equine therapy for children and vets. I have somebody who has a roofing company outside of Washington, D.C. area. I just have this broad range of people talking about all things negotiation, and I'm super excited about it. And then my book, Why Not Ask, is with the editor as we speak, and so I don't have a release date, but it is coming soon. And then I have new programs that I'm launching that is called Ven Masters, which is essentially like Toastmasters for negotiation, because I believe that you have to be able to practice to be an effective negotiator. That is what is the big distinguishing factor between somebody who's really effective as a negotiator and somebody who's not. The person who's effective has practiced more.
It's really interesting you say that, because that's probably one of my favorite words, right?
Mm.
I was a pianist for 10 years and got to be
Mm.
quite good, and don't play anymore, unfortunately. But you have to practice anything you want
Mhm.
to do well in life.
Oh
Any type
yeah,
of a
absolutely.
skill, even if it's a mindset skill, or if it's something you want to change about yourself, you have to practice.
Absolutely. I mean, Malcolm Gladwell said in one of his many amazing books, it's
Right.
10,000 hours, 10,000 hours, right? If you, that's what makes you, that's the difference between good and great is 10,000 hours. So
Yeah, nope, I totally agree. I read that same book too, so I
yeah,
agree with that.
great book.
So let's talk negotiation. Let's shift gears and let's get
Yes.
into the good stuff, the stuff that you love. So how did you get into negotiation? And I have to tell everybody the reason why I wanted her. I do have her coming on my other show, Fonta's Insider, but I wanted her to come on here because I saw something on social media that she helped a husband and wife come together, and about relationships. And we don't often think about negotiation as bringing people together. So take it away.
Yeah, so my philosophy on negotiation is that negotiation is a conversation about a relationship, and you cannot win a relationship. Now, that is a bit antithetical to how most people think of business negotiation. But
Yes.
whether you're entering into a business relationship or you're dissolving a business relationship, there's still a relationship. And my lawyer friends always laugh when I say this part because they're like, you're out of your mind. But I believe that negotiation is a hopeful act. So when we are negotiating with somebody, we believe that the outcome for our lives, and also we believe that for our counterpart, that our lives will somehow be better, will be enhanced as a result of entering into that relationship. And no matter what we do in any relationship, we're constantly negotiating. There's constant compromise and collaboration. And I want to say this very plainly. This does not mean that you roll over and let yourself be walked on. This does not mean that there is not conflict, because really, really strong relationships embrace conflict. They give space for conflict. It's not that they encourage it, but it's when it happens, they acknowledge that it exists and they figure out a path forward. And that's what negotiation does. Negotiation helps us resolve gives us a process for resolving future conflict that is inevitable in any relationship, whether it's a business situation or whether it's a personal situation. And, so I started out negotiating. Did you break it?
It's on the ground. Sorry about that.
At least you didn't break it. That's a good thing.
I know.
But I started negotiation when I graduated from undergrad. I went to work for what's now Verizon. Then it was Bell Atlantic. And I
Yep.
was a year into working there, and this opportunity came up. And I had always wanted to do international business. And the opportunity was to work in international mergers and acquisitions in the finance department. And it had a list of requirements, one of which was that you were supposed to have an MBA, which obviously I did not have one at that point because I was a year out of undergrad.
Oh,
So
okay.
I talked to my husband about it, and I talked to my manager about it. And we figured out how to take a tiny crack in the door and open it for me. And I became the first person in the finance group not to have an MBA, but who started doing international M&A, mergers and acquisitions work. And I started out in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. I worked in Singapore and South Korea, and then I went up to Hong Kong and Tokyo. But I also worked in Eastern and Western Europe. And it was during the time that the euro hadn't existed yet. The European
Okay.
Union existed, but the euro did not. And so all the governments in Europe were selling state owned assets in order to buy into the euro. And I got to work on a number of those deals. But the one that really made me go, oh my God, this negotiation stuff is really awesome, was we were bidding in partnership with British Telecom and Tele Denmark. So a three-part deal with three massive egos, because we were all former state, two of them were state owned, and we were, a baby bell. And I had to get all three of these companies and all of their advisors and bankers to agree on a single number to put in a 500-page bid document that we were submitting for the Belgian telephone company. And I was responsible for that because it was a number, and I was in finance, and I that was what I, and so
Had you
and
done that before?
I had never done it. I was 28 years old. I was negotiating with all these senior executives. I was negotiating with, and then I had to sell it to Belgacom, and I was negotiating with ministers of finance and ministers of telecommunication and CEOs and CFOs, and I was 28 years old, and I fell in love with it. And it didn't quite register that, I mean, I knew what I loved. I knew that I loved bringing different ideas together. I knew that I actually like conflict. I'm comfortable asking hard and challenging questions. I'm comfortable pushing the envelope in a conversation and in a relationship. And I'm comfortable testing things, which are some of the hallmarks of an effective negotiator. And
Right.
so when I finished working, I left Bell Atlantic to get my MBA at Harvard. And after that, I started working in procurement, and I started teaching procurement organizations in large companies how to buy, how to go through the process of putting together vendor selection. And this was at a time when people who were in procurement were not well respected across most companies. There
Mm-hmm.
was not a lot of people ended up in procurement because it was where you went to retire, because people didn't think it was a real skill. And it was starting to become much more, it was, people were starting to see it, the importance of it, and see it as a strategic advantage to be able to have a strong supply chain. And things around pricing and contracting were evolving during that time. And I
So
just
it
and I
sounds to
just
me,
loved it.
it sounds to me like you has a lot of natural skills. Did you have any mentors at the time?
I mean, I did not really. I mean, a lot. I mean, not. I mean, I did in kind of like basic procurement, but when it came to negotiation, no, I really taught myself how to do it. There were some things that I questioned that, like even when I was in my own company at the time, Deloitte Consulting, we would go to sell a project, and you'd have, a rate table where all your hourly rates are for all the levels of your employees, and partners would go in and they'd immediately discount it. And I'm like, well, what the heck do you have a rate table for if you're automatically going to discount it? And they were consistent in what that discount was. And I'm like, so the rate is not X, the rate is X minus this, because you never go in at the actual rate. I'm like, why don't you negotiate down there? And they come up with, and this is what we do in our own heads. The hardest part of any negotiation is a negotiation that happens right in between here. And it goes on in our head. And I saw it at partner levels. I saw it in executive in boardrooms. It's like, well, we can't do that, because if we do that, then they're not even going to entertain us. We'll get laughed out of the room. We'll be this. And it was just like, and it blew my mind. It's like, you haven't even asked, and
Mm-hmm.
what value are you adding? And so it never made sense. So there was this intuitive part to me that just, I couldn't understand why people weren't asking for more of what they wanted, regardless of whether it was a small company, a mid-sized company, or a large company. They don't. It's because people are people.
And I found that in the tech industry because I have
Mm,
my background's in the tech industry. My
mm-hmm,
husband still is, and you talk about all of that negotiation, all those pricing things.
mm,
Exactly,
yep,
everything you said, I can confirm.
yeah,
That's exactly what I experienced. That's what he
yeah.
experiences, and it's amazing. So being in this all this time, what are three things that when you go to teach someone,
Mm-hmm.
where do you start?
The first one is you have to get clarity. You have to be clear on what it is that you want. And sometimes I'll ask people, how do does that sound like, is it easy to be clear on what you want? And I use a car sales, buying a car as an example. So I'll ask people, so when you're going to go buy a car, what do you want? Right? So people come up, they'll say price. They'll come up with, the model and the make of the car that they want. They'll come up with the color, the features. Does it have heated seats? Or in Vegas in the summer you want cooling seats.
Oh yeah.
What does it have? Does it have a warranty? So those are usually, is it safe? Is it reliable? Those are the things they throw out. And then I say, well, do you want it today or do you want it later? Because that one question drives the value that you're contributing to a car dealer. If that car is sitting on the lot, it's costing that dealer money. If you are ordering it and it's coming off of an assembly line, that's a different pricing model for them, right?
Yep.
So when I say get clear, I mean, as my grandmother used to say, down to the gnat's ass level details. What are all the possible things that you and your counterpart could want or have as a result of this deal? And when you do that, then you get this exhaustive body of information, and then you have to say, what's really important to me? And the reason why it's really crucial that you understand what's important to you and you prioritize those things is because what's important to you is not necessarily important to your counterpart. And you want to make sure that when you're trading things off, that the things that you're trading are the unimportant things to you that are important to your counterpart, right? And then, so once you understand and you have that clarity on you and what you want and why it's important, then you have to ask, is it doable for your counterpart? And I had somebody not long ago say to me, the most important thing I learned in this whole talk was that I should think about my counterpart. And she's the same age you and I are. And I'm like, and it struck me because I know that there are people who don't think about their counterpart, but because it's my profession, it's what I do, I'm always thinking about the counterpart. In fact, when you're at the proverbial table, negotiation table, you are not the most important person at the table because all you have are assumptions, and you should be testing whether your assumptions about your counterpart are accurate. And so
I
that's the
love that.
first thing, is get clear on what it is you want, why you want it, and is it doable for your counterpart.
And if you don't know, you just have to come up with some guesses.
So I'm a heavy data oriented. So anybody who ever listens to me talk and then gets to negotiate with me is at a huge advantage, because I tell everyone how I negotiate. So I'm like, I'm giving the blueprint. It's like, this is what I do. And I am a data oriented negotiator. So data is important in terms of helping me clarify what it is that I want. But also it's really important helping me understand what's important for my counterpart. A number of years ago, I was negotiating it was a large business. I was working with an oil and gas company, and they had a software that they bought 600 concurrent licenses for every year. So concurrent licenses are, I can have a maximum number of 600 people using this software at the exact same time. And this software was over $10,000 a year per seat, plus 20% support and maintenance costs.
It's
It was
always more.
expensive, right?
It's always more.
Right. And so my client was like, well, this is what we want, da, 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 da. Right. So they had this and so I did the data. I gathered data. I looked at, and I asked them questions. Who uses this software? What do they use it for? How do they use it? How often are they using it? And I got data and I got information. And when I analyzed the data, I found that those 600 licenses, they used 1 week out of the year. And the rest of the time, they used 280.
Wow.
280 licenses. They were paying for 320 licenses that they used 1 week out of the year. And so we came up with really creative alternatives for them to, they couldn't get their heads wrapped around dropping that many licenses, but they did drop down to 400 licenses. And we came up with a different licensing model and all sorts of things to figure out a different way of handling that. And we saved them hundreds of thousands of dollars over a 5-year contract. But because they thought they knew what they wanted, but they were not clear on what it was that they wanted, because they did not do the research on themselves to actually understand what they really needed and wanted.
And the other thing too, asking the right questions.
Yes. And that is the second big. So you asked me kind of what are the 3 things. So the first thing is get clarity. The second thing is knowing how to ask and preparing to ask. And you do that in part by understanding your negotiation style and how you communicate, because how we ask for something matters. And so so I have a quiz on our website that the guests can take to understand, that the audience can take to understand what their default negotiation style is, because it is important. And, if you're somebody who, likes to be in meetings and likes long emails, and you're negotiating with somebody like me, who doesn't like either of those things. I like things in bullet points. I like 15 minutes meetings or less. Like a 5-minute stand-up meeting is great. The whole agile methodology and technology is fantastic. And, but if you want something from me and you come to me and you send me a 5-paragraph email, or you set up an hour-long meeting, I'm not likely to read the email, and I'm not likely to accept the meeting. better to come
Yeah,
at
I don't
me
like
with
long
the
emails either.
yeah, I don't. So knowing how to ask and then knowing your default style is important because we start negotiating when we're kids, right? We've been doing this for years. The problem is that the vast majority of us have never learned any other way of negotiating. So if you were one of those kids who threw temper tantrums and called people's names and bullied people, guess what? You're probably still doing that. You might not be doing it exactly the same way, but you're probably still doing that.
I
And
would agree with you.
if you were a kid who ran to your bedroom and hid your head under your pillow or hid in your closet, you're probably still doing that too, just maybe in a different way. And so you want to understand what your negotiation style is, because instead of having it be a default, there are different times when different styles are can work to your benefit and get you closer to reaching agreement and finding common ground. But if you go into your negotiation every time with the same style, then you lose the benefit of being flexible and using your style as part of your strategy. And so when you understand your style, you can use it intentionally. You can decide, oh, this is a situation that requires a benefactor. That's a situation where there's conflict, there's anger, there's a friction in the relationship. I need somebody who's really good. I need to bring that part of me out that's really good at bridging relationships, that's rebuilding a relationship. Or
Is that what you
it's
did with that one relationship that you were that I
oh,
saw?
that one couple. So that's actually it was different styles for each of those individuals. So the example that Kim is talking about is I had a client and I'd never done a divorce before except my own, and I did not do that one very well. We'll just put that out there. but but a
Well,
friend
you can
oh go
never,
ahead.
in my opinion, you don't do, when you do things for yourself, it's a lot
Oh,
easier to do it for
so much
someone
harder.
else than yourself.
It is. And procurement definitely equals profit leverage. Absolutely. 100% agree with that. But in this situation, this a friend of mine reached out to me. She and her husband had been separated, legally separated for many years, but they had not separated the bank account, and they had a ranch that was worth over $2 million. And so the situation was he had all the data, he had the numbers, and he had the bank account. And his response, they had to figure out how they were going to distribute the profits or the proceeds from the house. And he's like, it's my number, or she can sue me. She can take me to court. Right? She takes my number, and he was going to take a lot more than he was giving her, and it was like it's my way or the highway. And she didn't trust him, and she felt that because she didn't understand the spreadsheets that he had created. She was not. I
Hmm.
mean, she would print them out on paper. She wouldn't read them, and you can't do a spreadsheet printed out. You can't, because
No,
you can't see
because
the
you have to
formulas.
put them
You got to
together.
be able to audit it. You got to be able to put the math together. And so she couldn't recreate it. So it was causing her to doubt his honesty and his transparency. And so she's like, I can't talk to him. We're yelling. And so I went in and talked to him, talked to her, figured out what she was hoping to accomplish out of the negotiation, and then I talked to him, and it ended up. So we started talking. He and I started talking on a Thursday. On Sunday, he agreed to give her 100% of everything, and on
Wow.
Tuesday, she decided to give him half of it back. And she calls it a good karma divorce. And the way that I did that is, one, I met him where he was at, so I listened to both of them, and I know her fairly well, so I knew what she was trying to accomplish. I knew what she was feeling. I knew where she was going. She's a very feeling centered person, and he is a very fact centered person. And so I spent time in a spreadsheet. I had him walk me through things. I had him we audited the spreadsheet together on the phone so that he could show me. He actually would click through and show me bank accounts. He'd show me what was going on in this bank account and what was showing on in this bank account. And I was able to recreate kind of the story in a way that she would be able to hear it. And then I was able to explain to him what was what was causing her to feel, that he was not being transparent and not being honest, and the language that he was using and how it was impacting her. And and he at the end of it, he also thanked me. He sent me a really lovely thank you, and how much he appreciated kind of taking that, I was able to take that friction out. Now, I was also still very firm with him about what her expectations were, right?
Yeah.
But he hit a point where he realized that he was missing something. There were two things. One, it was very clear to me that he still cares very deeply for her. And he talked about their relationship, and they'd been together for over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that when you've been together that long, I don't care. You still have memories. And if you end that relationship in just anger and acrimony and hatred and pettiness, you just really discounted 20 years of memories, because
Yeah.
you leave that situation and you start questioning. You go, what did I ever think I was doing, spending all that time with him? Why did I not leave him sooner? Blah 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 blah. And you start like, and that stuff starts eating at you, and it eats at your soul, and
It
it
does.
it destroys you, and it destroys your happiness. And they have grandkids, and it's like, what are you gonna, So he hit a point. He's like, I'm just gonna trust her to do what's right. And so
Wow.
she's on the phone with me, and she starts down this road. I've done this. I've done this. I did this more. I spent more here, da da da, because she owned the property before he even came into the picture. I invested more here, blah, 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 blah. And I said to her, I said, what are you going to do when we are off the phone today? Like, we're going to get off the phone. What are you going to go do today?
Mm-hmm.
So she told me. And I said, is what you did on the ranch 15 years ago, 10 years ago, is that impacting what you're going to do when you get off the phone with me? Well, no. Well, is what your soon to be ex did 7 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, last year, is it going to impact what you're going to do when you get off the phone with me today? No. They're both in their 70s. When you are 10 years from now and you are in your mid 80s and you look back at this moment in time, how do you want to remember what you did and how you chose to behave in this moment?
Yeah.
And so she gets off the phone, and the next day she said, I gave him half plus $50,000 because he had given her a business loan, and she made sure to repay him that too.
Wow.
And it preserved their fond memories of each other. And
Yeah.
and I feel that is, but people look at it and go, but those are two individuals. Those are two individuals that were married, for 20 years, and they cared about each other still. But you know what? Business is relationships. This bullshit about and I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to swear on your show, but
No, it's fine.
business is business kind of thing is baloney. I've had a couple of people say just recently, I was on a Clubhouse thing on Friday, and somebody said this, and I was screaming in my house when they said, "Well, a good deal is when you both walk away unhappy." Bullshit.
Oh,
No, that
yeah.
is like not true. It's just not true. What that tells me is you both were so myopically focused on the value that was sitting in front of you that you chose not to look for greater amounts of value that were beyond you.
Yep.
And you just said your view of negotiation is, if you win, I lose. If you win this point, I lose this point.
That's exactly what everybody thinks.
And it's not. I mean, I usually have an egg sitting on my desk these days because I use this example all the time. But if you got an egg in a shell and it's not cooked, it's raw, right? And you've got three people who want that egg, how do you divide the egg? How do you divide
I
the
don't know.
egg to create value equally amongst the three? So most people say, actually, everyone says one of these two things. They say, well, we're going to boil it and just cut it in thirds, or we're going to scramble it and divide it in thirds. But negotiation, that's the way most people think about a negotiation, right? So an effective negotiator says, but what if I poke a small hole in the bottom of the egg, and I drain the egg yolk and the egg white out, and then I separate the yolk from the white? Now I have an empty shell that somebody can paint on as a decoration or can compost. I have the yolk of the egg, which a baker could use to glaze something that they're baking.
Yeah.
And I can still have an egg white omelet. So
Oh,
now I have
wow.
three completely different parts of an egg.
Wow.
But most people only see that myopic thing that, oh, it's an egg and we always boil an egg or we scramble an egg or we fry an egg, right? That's all we do with an egg, right? But there are other things you can do with an egg. And so negotiation is really about figuring out, how do you bring that concept, that egg concept, into your
Wow.
conversations.
I think this is a perfect way to just you just brought it all together. And thank you so much. Oh my gosh, Christine, if people didn't get something out of this, I don't know, what. One of the things I want to pull up, though, and showed you this earlier, when I was looking at her, we're on social media together, and I saw this quote, and it's something I feel so strongly about, but I thought it was so appropriate, to what we were talking to here. So I'll let you talk about it, Christine.
I love this quote. There is a purpose for everyone you meet. Some people come into your life to test you, some to teach you, some to use you, and some to bring out the very best in you. And I believe that people come into our lives for a moment. It's very rare. I mean, I know I don't. I do not have close friends that I've had since I was in elementary school or high school. But I do have a couple of really close friends from college. But most of my friends kind of have come and gone out of my life at different
Yeah.
moments, because
Yeah.
we move through, we're growing, we're changing, right? And, some people come in and some people have come in and they've used and abused me. Absolutely, that has happened. And I've learned something from them. Some people have come in to be mentors and teachers and advocates for me, and I've learned something from them. And, so you learn from just, you can learn from everybody and at
Yeah.
any point in time. And also, another critical thing to being effective as a negotiator is you have to, one of the reasons why I love that quote and how it relates to negotiation is, negotiation is about being curious. And when you think about all those different roles that someone comes into your life to potentially meet, and somebody may do all of them, right?
Oh,
Somebody
yeah.
may
Yeah.
one of them, but somebody may be all of them or a combination. But when you're curious about yourself and you're curious about your counterpart, those people coming and moving in and out of your life, are where you find your cornerstone, and you can find your joy and your happiness in that.
Wow. Thank you, Christine, so much. Oh my gosh, that was so beautiful way to wrap this and to end this. And I hope everyone here has gotten, something out of this. Is there one thing you want to say? I'm going to really quick put your other information up here. If you want to get a hold of Christine, at the very bottom.
Yep, just you can text VENN to 26786, and we'll get you access to our free quiz, and we'll send you an ebook on the 7 keys to successful negotiation. You can also check that out on our website at VEN Negotiation. Me on LinkedIn. That's my primary way of connecting with people.
Good.
So find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect and chat. So
awesome. Again, thank you again.
Thank you, Kim. You're amazing.
Everyone, I have the best people I've associated with, and I'm so, so grateful for all of you. DK, was on here before and he commented, and I just want you to know that the people that you have in your life, be so grateful for them, celebrate them, and I hope this negotiation maybe helped you with your not just with negotiation, but with your life and your relationships, and to treasure those that you work with and those that you have personally in your life as well. Um, this is Kim Bassett. Thank you again so much for being a part of our community and watching and showing up. And you guys have a great day.